Ever since motorcycles have been around, women, as well as men, have been riding them. But back in the very early days, it was frowned upon somewhat because, back then, women were expected to wear dresses and riding gear required the wearing of trousers. So these early women riders were considered to be unladylike. And even right up to this day, some people still consider women who ride bikes to be butch or even lesbians. Of course, this is just not the case. And even if they are, what difference does it make? They are still fellow riders. A lot of this stigma came about because of the way women riders were portrayed in many of the old biker movies. Back in the day, it just wasn't considered proper for a woman to ride a motorcycle. And women were mostly pillion passengers.
Oh, I'll have to snuggle up tight. Oh, Arthur, this is the way we snuggle up in bed at night.
Or rode in sidecars. These days, all kinds of women ride motorcycles. If you meet a lady rider, do not assume that she knows less about bikes than you do by giving her advice which wasn't asked for. Nobody likes unsolicited advice. And also, just because she's a girl, it doesn't mean she can't ride a bike as good as you either. Meet Dasha, an attractive and sexy Russian girl. And that's not a sexist comment, it's just a fact. More on this subject later. Anyway, Dasha just happens to like riding stunt bikes, so let's take a look at her in action. How many of you blokes out there think you can ride a bike like that? Then, there is Anna Carrasco. What Anna achieved in 2018, when she became a world champion racing against men, is nothing short of amazing. If you want to know more about Anna, watch this doco which is on the channel.
Amazing Motorcycling Feats, Part 1.
It's quite an eye-opener. It's pretty narrow-minded to assume any girl who just happens to ride a motorcycle is a lesbian, butch, can't ride a bike as good as you, or knows less about bikes than you do. If you do, you may well end up looking like a real dickhead. And don't start trying to crack onto her either. Treat her just as you would any other rider. I mean, you wouldn't try to crack onto any of your male riding buddies, would you? Well, maybe you would if this is you.
We're fun to stay at the YMCA. We're fun to stay at the YMCA.
Probably the most famous woman rider in the early days of motorcycling was Dorothy Robinson, better known as Dot Robinson. She was born in Australia in 1912 and later moved to America with her family when her father wanted to expand his Golding sidecar business. Dot was instrumental in the acceptance of women actually riding motorcycles and was co-founder of the all-female motorcycle group, the Motormaids, in 1940. She was also their first president, a title that she held for a quarter of a century. Over 80 years later, the Motormaids are still going strong, and they now have around 1,300 members. Dot set out to unite women riders, proving that women could ride a motorcycle and still be a lady. She was rarely seen without makeup, and she later became famous for wearing her pink riding outfits. Check her out sitting on her 1937 model Knucklehead. And note the ribbon in her hair. Dot kept riding right up to the age of 85. She passed away in 1999, aged 87. R.I.P. the First Lady of Motorcycling. Now, getting back to what I mentioned previously about sexism. There's no doubt that in the 1960s and 1970s that there were many ads for motorcycles that featured women, which were quite sexist. But attractive women and motorcycles go hand in hand, and this has been the case for many years. Many women riders and some men look down on these girls who pose scantily dressed with motorcycles. But just as a woman who rides a bike doesn't like being looked down upon by fellow male riders, neither should they look down on these girls. They model because they like it, and because they can. It doesn't mean they are a slut, and anyone that says such things is probably just more jealous than anything else. If this is you, you don't know this girl, and they could well be a motorcycle rider too. A classic example is lingerie model Miranda Kerr. She's been riding motorcycles since she was 5 years old. Then there's former Miss Israel, Gal Gadot, of Wonder Woman fame. She also rides motorcycles, although Wonder Woman's riding outfit has certainly improved over the years. Back in the 1960s and 1970s, Anne Margaret was one of the most famous sex symbols in the world. But she was in fact a very accomplished motorcycle rider. Here she is riding a Moto Guzzi V7, one of the biggest bikes of the era. In recent years, many motorcycle-related YouTube channels which feature women have popped up, highlighting the fact that women do ride motorcycles too. With the most famous one, of course, being Norali Schoenmaker from the Itsy Boots channel. And I probably didn't pronounce her name right either. I have absolutely no doubt that Norali cops her fair share of sexist comments on her videos. It's hard enough being a bloke on YouTube, putting up with a small percentage of dickheads, yet alone what an attractive girl like Norali would have to put up with. The annual Milan Motorcycle Show is over 100 years old. It's the largest and most important trade fair for the motorcycle industry, and almost every manufacturer at the show uses attractive and sexy girls to help bring attention to their products. Somehow a bloke posing with a motorcycle just doesn't look quite right. What do you think? Women with motorcycles also feature in many artworks, with the cream of the crop being paintings by world-renowned American artist David Yule. Many of his paintings feature attractive and sexy women with motorcycles. But it's art, it's not sexism. Motorcyclists are a minority, and the more people that ride them, the better for all of us. It's about respect. Male riders should respect women riders, and women riders should also respect other women. It doesn't matter if they are a lingerie model, a grid girl, a pillion passenger or a rider. Cheers, and thanks for watching.